Have you ever wondered why so many relationships fail? Is it the people we're choosing, the way society pushes unrealistic expectations, or just bad timing? Maybe we're not even given the tools to make love work in today's world. I mean, think about it. How many times have you seen friends break up over a simple misunderstanding or because they couldn't even communicate? Maybe you've been there yourself. Relationships are hard, but is it really just about choosing the wrong person? Or is there something deeper at play here? Today, we're going to break it down. Hey, Dave, what's up? Welcome.
Hey, Wendy. Oh, that sounds really strange to say across the table to your wife, isn't it? Like,
That's okay.
Hey, girl, what's going on?
It's the one thing that we did this weekend that you just don't shout out in a crowd of 1,800 people, hey, babe, when they cross the finish line. You know, I actually had to say, David, like 10 times. So what did you do this weekend?
Well, I ran a half marathon on Saturday, which was awesome.
What a blast, wasn't it?
It was
Super
a lot of
fun.
It was a lot of fun. You and I were there together at the starting line, and then I never saw you again until you were yelling what I thought was, hey, babe. But no, it was David. As I crossed the finish line with my hands in victory and looked at my time and thought how incredible, and then realized I was in the back third of the pack.
All right, so give us the highlights of that race.
So we started at the Capitol building at dawn as the sun came up, which was it was just an incredible experience. The energy was incredible. They closed the entire downtown section of Capitol Boulevard and then out one of the main streets where usually it's just like bumper to bumper sort of traffic, but not today. And and then it was just on autopilot, like lock and load. It was just surreal, right? Like, because a year ago, I couldn't possibly have actually run or even walked. I probably could have walked it, but not run it. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was an epic experience. You know, this is race 1 of 3 that we have. And my highlights were, I think, just being together, going through the experience, and then being with everyone. You know what was on my heart the most was thinking about all the people that really wanted to run that race, to be there that day to do that, and their bodies failed them in some way, or they just couldn't make it, or whatever happening is in their life, and they just couldn't make it. So I was running with a lot of people in my heart, just thinking of them wanting to do that race. And it was so fun. I think the highlight for me was going down one of our streets that we normally drive on that usually you cannot run on, and running that direction where the sun had come up over the hillside. And that was kind of on our side of town in the turf area that we know. So I was like, okay, we're golden. Like, I love this. And it was just beautiful. We also got to run by, we call it a green belt, but it's a paved pathway that runs along the river for a portion of this race. So that was so beautiful to be with the trees and the river next to you. I just loved it. And then by the time you got to close to the very end, more and more radio stations were shown up, you know, with music pumping, and it was so great to see the police force dancing out there. Sorry, guys,
helicopters flying around.
That was so cool. Yeah, that was so fun just to see you guys let loose and support us. And then I always say to, you know, the volunteers and the police force and first aid out there, you know, thank you for being here, because it takes a lot for all of those people to show up and do their job, and then also get into the mood of supporting all of us, you know, while we're moving through. And we all don't really have the happiest faces when we're moving through, because we're trudging through in our own space. We've got our headphones on or whatever you're doing, and you're just locked and loaded. Like you said, you're doing the thing that you trained for. So, you know, shout out to all those incredible volunteers and all the people that they put in place to make that whole thing happen. That was awesome. You know, and for me, my big win coming through, you know, under 2 hours, I was just so stoked, you know, to come through, even though painful it is. Check out my post on Instagram. I did get the undaunting callus blisters. So frustrating, but that's okay. We're going to work through it. And, you know, we've got this next race coming up this weekend.
Yeah, shout out to Wendy. She was number 4 in what was one of the deepest age group categories.
Yeah.
Only 2 minutes out of second and third. And then who knows what was up with that first place girl, because she ran like a 1:32.
That's amazing.
Or something
So
ridiculous,
rad.
right? So ridiculous.
So rad.
But we're talking about relationships today, and
Yeah.
I recognize that we probably have a one-sided relationship with the running community, right? And when you think about it that way, we're there to run, but there were so many incredible volunteers, right? Like every mile there was an aid station, or every other mile, I don't know what it was, handing out things, and just, from packet pickup to the party afterwards, there's a lot of people making it happen for us. And so it's just a good reminder that, everything in life, you have some sort of relationship to it. And what are you contributing to the relationship? So it's probably time for us to volunteer for one of the ones we
Oh,
don't
absolutely.
run, right? And I think it's important to learn that side of the business. I say that loosely. I don't mean it literally. That side of the business, so that we can help other people achieve what they want to achieve.
Oh, absolutely. It was awesome. There was a kid that was on the kind of final stretch on Crescent Rim Drive. He was like the mini Tony Robbins. He literally was out there in this low voice going, "You can do it, let's go." I mean, it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, he just like pumped himself up. He must have been like, I don't know, 14 or something, but it was so great, and I was giving him thumbs up, and the more thumbs up you give him, the more energy he had to continue doing that. I mean, for all those people coming through, and it was a long group of people coming through. I mean, hours worth. So,
yeah, it was a lot of people. There was one kid who kept just jetting past me, right? And then I would catch up to him because he'd be walking and he'd be catching his breath, and then he would jet past me, and then I would catch him again. So I started saying to him, 60-year-old passing you. Yeah, 16-year-old passing you again.
That's great.
At the end, he just gave it all he could. So I saw him cross the finish line in front of me.
That's so great. Well,
but he seemed to be one of those people that probably had woke up and they said, "I'm going to run a half marathon today," and did it, which I think is cool.
That's so cool.
Because when you're 14, you can do stuff like that.
It's so cool. Yeah, especially, if you've grown up running in the space and this is just normal for you. But for people like Dave and I who have not, and this is new for us, it is a totally different feeling out there. But, again, shout out to my family that showed up, my mom, my sister. It was so cool to have you guys there and just be part of that. So, yeah, onward we go. So, all right. On every episode on these next few months left of the year, Dave and I have been taking a high-level AI mastery class with Mindvalley, and we just wanted to share a couple of things that we learn on each session, so you are with us as we're moving through that space. And last week, we had the honor of working with Dominique Ashburn, who is Mr. Grateful, who shared a lot about image creation. Dave, what was your highlights in that?
It's just, you think of AI still, right, as this computer sort of medium. And so now that we've bridged into using it as a creative medium, and you realize it really is just another way to artistically express yourself, right? So maybe you don't have the ability to draw, right? Like me, I can draw sort of remedial stick figures. I'm not even good at stick figures, but I'm able to create out of my mind some incredible images. And I think that's, what power is in life, right? It's taking your thought and turning it into existence. So we're having a good time and just learning how to use the different styles, the different tools to accomplish what you want. Not on a one-off, but I think the power comes in creating series, things like that.
I think the concepts that Dominique shared with us, and then the platforms, the tools that he was using was GPT, Midjourney, and I want to say Runway ML, believe, were the three that he used. Pretty incredible platforms, and Midjourney can be pretty extensive if you jump in there and really learn how to take control of Midjourney. Wow, there's so much.
If you haven't used Midjourney lately, so it is moved off of Discord and onto its own platform, and it's a lot more intuitive, drag and drop, click and point, that sort of stuff, without all the prompt engineering that you used to have to do in Discord to try and get something that you wanted.
Yeah, the other platform we used was Photoshop Beta. Was incredible. I thought that was just wow, blown my mind what AI is doing in there. So
yeah, the generative AI stuff is, again, making a tool like Photoshop is, even just a couple of years ago, was still such a complicated tool to use if you weren't using it on a daily basis, right? And now there's some things that you can really, hash out
in there. Well, another thing that we did also last week is we were finishing our 1-year coaching program with Vishen Lakhiani from Mindvalley, and we dove deep last week also into kind of the strategies and lessons from Alex Hormozi's model, $100 million offers, and just applying that to your video sales pages and your marketing. It was just awesome. And that was such a great session because I think the session before maybe was Peter Kell. So it just tied right into what we were just talking about with VSL pages, which is video sales pages for all, if you don't know. But wow, what an incredible teaching that was. Okay, so let's get on with it. Remind you, we are live on YouTube. You can search for Embers Rising podcast and hopefully you'll find us there. We're just continuing releasing our videos of this. So if you want to see Dave and I, or maybe not, because you never know, you just are not feeling like doing YouTube. But yeah, you can always press play on YouTube and find us there. We're going to release a lot of our shorts and stuff over there as well. So officially, listen, welcome to episode number 30. Woohoo! I'm Wendy Jae, and with me is
David Tucker.
And today we are going to dive deep into one of the biggest challenges that we all face in life, and that's relationships. We're going to explore why 99% of relationships fail, and more importantly, how you can overcome the obstacles that stand in the way of lasting love. Now, whether you're in a relationship, healing from one, or looking to build something new, you're in the right place. So, hey, let's fuel the inner fire right now, give you the tools to create a love that super thrives. But before we do, I have to dive into the incredible shout outs because they are so in alignment with today's episode. So I've got to dive into that. But even before that, I do have to acknowledge our listeners, our viewers, and say, listen, we are super grateful that you showed up today because it takes a lot to press pause in your life and acknowledge that you press play today. And Dave and I totally acknowledge that you press play today and you're here with us. You know, relationships are one of the most important and sometimes hardest parts of our lives. I mean, all of us have been hurt at some point. And today, we are truly grateful that you've chosen to invest in yourself with us and your relationship to yourself and relationship to whoever you have relationships with. By tuning into Embers Rising, episode number 30 today. So your willingness to show up and grow is what makes all the difference. So let's dig in together and make this episode one that fuels your heart and your connection. So important. And the shout outs today are so cool, Dave, because I don't know how this is possible. Maybe it's just the content that we're putting out there, but let me share with you what's going on from our followers out there. So LinkedIn, we did a post about 5 reasons to improve communication skills. And Kenza Iman said, Wendy, indeed, effective communication enhances all aspects of life, fostering better understanding and becoming stronger. Yeah, absolutely. And hey, who doesn't love Jenna Kutcher? Now, I've been a Jenna Kutcher fan for 10, 15 years. She's been around for 20 plus years in the marketing space. And whether it's Jenna Kutcher or one of her assistants wrote back, yes, every step, even the unseen ones, is moving us forward. Keep going. So thank you, Jenna. That's awesome. Robin, Amy also love the simplicity and power in these steps. Taking action, staying consistent truly makes all the difference. So true. And then Robin also responded to another post that I had out there about actually ultra running. And he said that trail running is like life, full of unpredictable twists and tough climbs. So true. Each scrape builds resilience, and those that lost will always win. I love that. That's so cool, Robin. Thank you for that. I had a meme out there that I believe was on Instagram, and it was a big, funny, bright yellow face with a kind of face, just like, facial tone. So if you're listening to this and you're not seeing this, that's what this is. And the meme said, when your partner's tone shifts mid conversation and suddenly you forget how to respond coherently. We've all been there. I've got
It's going to happen to me today.
Oh yeah,
watch! It's going to happen in real time.
What? Attorney Ali says it's amazing how quickly things can shift with just a change in tone. Communication really is everything in maintaining that connection. Gosh, that is so true. Amy or Attorney Ali, I think it is Ali. Attorney Ali, man, we are on the same page, 100%. That's so cool. And then I did a post on how to grow, embracing discomfort, and we have been there. Jessie B. Social, she says, let's get out of our comfort zone. Totally agree. Our whereabouts, such a powerful reminder. It's amazing how stepping out of your comfort zones can lead to incredible growth and transformation. You know, I want to pause for a sec, Dave, because isn't that true? You know, it's so easy to say that, But then how do you know when you can get out of your comfort zone? You know, you've been out of your comfort zone a lot this year, pushing into yourselves and be like, what just happened to me? I just did a 3-hour run, a 4-hour run.
And it's become my new comfort zone, right? And so you just always have to sort of check in with yourself and what's going on in the surroundings. It's like fact checking, right?
Yeah.
Like, is this true? And, it's so funny that people in their comfort zone are so uncomfortable, right? And you see people that have health challenges or work life, like, oh, there's all kinds of things. But you see, like, from looking down at what they're doing, that they're in their comfort zone, and yet they're so uncomfortable. So push yourself.
I think, when Dave says push yourself, and this comment is from Our Whereabouts. If you're not following them, check them out. They're amazing power couple that does a lot of traveling all over incredible places around the world. And when they say it's amazing how stepping out of your comfort zone can lead to incredible growth and transformation, that's so true, because they're looking at it from a different perspective, from a different piece of land, a different place in the world. And that is really true. It changes you. I remember when and this is in alignment with today's relationship conversation, I had a really big downfall with my mother for about 5 years. We did not talk well. Very, very little conversation. She was not really part of my life. And it took me going to another culture, another community, clear across the world, living and guiding in Fiji, to have a different perspective that transformed me to say, when I came back to see her, that I needed to respect her where she was at, and I wanted the relationship to change. And so I needed to find the space with myself for her to be her, because I wanted that relationship. So anyway, that is so true. Putts and penalties. Love you guys. We only can win when trying and being brave. Yes. And Hannah I Power, you are always there for us. Love this reminder. Thank you so much. That's so great. And then I think this is back on LinkedIn. David Young says, if you're always doing what you know how to do, then there's no growth. It's like doing 2 + 2 all your life. Gotta move.
Comfort zone.
I love that, David. That's awesome. Totally. And Robin Amy's back. He says, embracing discomfort is like training for a marathon. It's super tough at first, but each step builds resilience. Lean into those challenges and watch your strength multiply. Keep pushing. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Good stuff.
A couple more. SEO_expert_ Hassan, Hasan, beautifully said, true growth and success are found when we rise together, lifting each other higher along the way. Man, aren't these in alignment with today's episode? This is crazy. It's just amazing. I'm so glad I chose this. I did not see these comments before I actually worked on this episode. So this is so cool to see this. Proactive marketing says, exactly. It's all about supporting and uplifting one another. A couple more. Victoria, I want to say Banzazek. I'm not sure. Banzazek? You'll have to let me know how to pronounce your last name, Victoria. Love this. When we achieve success, we should not forget to support others in their journey. Jesus Jaramillo says, always looking for ways to add value and to receive. And Oscar, I want to say Strachan, maybe? Lifting others as we climb creates real impact and makes the journey worthwhile. So, man, thank you, everyone, for sharing that with us. That is so awesome just to have that. See that you're there for us. And please leave us a comment out there, because we will see it. We will see it. And hopefully we can bring you on. So we have a plan for shout outs going forward. So we are excited about that. Can't share that quite yet, but yeah, leave us a comment. But we're going to dive in, Dave, to these core lessons I really want to share, because relationships are tough. And, everybody wants to say they're easy and, icing on the cake. But I think even the power couples that we know that we've coached with, people that, you might be thinking of, like Tom and Lisa Bilyeu. I'm thinking like, who am I thinking of on Molokai?
Oh, yeah.
John and Missy Butcher. There's so many I could shout out, but there's always challenges and there's always work to be done.
And this is an interesting topic, because we're coming off a day full of relationships.
Yes.
So we had a run on Saturday, but then Sunday it was full bore, because your brother had his sort of post-wedding family get-together.
That's right.
And I don't know about everybody in the audience. Maybe it's just us. Maybe we're the ones that only have challenges with our families, right? But
Leave us a comment if you have a challenge with your family right now.
There's a lot.
Please, we want to know we're not alone.
There's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of different dynamics, in-laws, new people, new relationships, the backstories, right? Things we won't talk about publicly here, but it's draining, right? Like being proactive, positive, being the person you want to be when it's in direct, right, like opposition to the way other people are showing up or how they choose to run their lives. And I'm not saying good or bad. It just is the way it is. And it really is like looking in a microscope at relationships and seeing all of the different challenges like going on.
Yeah, for sure. I think when I was working on this episode, I was thinking about us building our relationship. Then I was also thinking about why 99% of relationships fail when you are together and you cannot make it work and you are going partner to partner to partner to partner. What is really going on? There's so many lessons out there. So let's start with number one, because I've got to dive into this, and I want to give you real takeaways that you can apply today to your life if you are working on this for yourself or want to be better, or you're in a relationship right now and something caught you that said, ooh, I actually need to, step up on that and handle it. But number one, and these aren't in any order, but lesson number one that Dave and I have talked about for the 99% of reason relationships fail is not being able to heal past traumas. Before we can build strong relationships, we really need to heal from our past. And I'm not saying that everything needs to come out and you're like perfectly healed, but carrying unhealed trauma into new relationships is like running a race with a giant backpack that's really heavy full of rocks. You're not going to get very far. From personal experience and professionals that Dave and I have worked with, we know that emotionally healing allows us to break patterns of pain we may unknowingly carry into our future connections with people. And I think I'll share a story with you. I was in a relationship with someone who was really emotionally abusive. It felt worse than actually a physical abuse. And I started seeing a therapist actually during the relationship, like maybe 5 months in, 4 months in, I knew I was uncomfortable. And right away I was like, okay, I need to get into therapy, not only to help me get out of the relationship, but to also help guide me away, to help me, where do I need to go? Where do I need to go? And also to help me solidify, because I had trouble talking about it with my family, to help me break the cycle. It took many years for me to get back to myself, but that allowed me to find David Tucker, my soulmate, because I allowed myself to be without anyone, and I started the process of loving myself, just loving myself and doing everything that I wanted to do without the somebody. I moved to Hawaii and I was okay being by myself. I didn't want to date. I just wanted to be fulfilled with what I wanted to do and open the door for somebody to come through, like prepare the area, but also work on myself. And that's what we're talking about. I needed to start really working on myself and healing those traumas before I could really have a healthy relationship into my life. Dave, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so I'm just going to flip the coin here on this because you got out of that relationship inside of a year, something like that.
Yeah.
I was married previously and to a very nice person, but we just weren't, like the energetic part wasn't there and the alignment of goals. And I was really just working on business. And so I was the one who just stayed in a relationship that was more like a roommate, right, for many, many years. And just thought, I've settled. This is the way life is. I don't want to fail. Like all of the judgment that's going to come, you're going to lose friends, blah, blah, blah. Like there's all of those BS things that go on in your head. And when you start to elevate yourself and you start to really question what's going on in your life and what you want out of life, sometimes you just find that there's relationships that just don't serve you. It's not that that person's good or bad, right? Like in your situation, the person, because I have some inside stories, was clearly bad, right? Like in the way we would sort of think of things. And so, there goes a huge chunk of my life that...
How many years was that, Dave?
I want to say it was 14.
Okay.
I think.
That's a lot.
It was a lot. Yeah. It was a lot of time. A lot of time of being a roommate with someone. And
Yeah.
I guess they were a good roommate, but again, it wasn't the relationship we wanted, but I recognize that for most of us, we attract who we are and not what we want out of life. And so as I started to change who I was, it became very apparent that this wasn't going to work, right? And I had to engineer a number of relationships in my life. I'm like, this just isn't in alignment with where I am headed. And it becomes an anchor, right? This anchor that just keeps dragging you back into this past. And that's what makes it difficult, right?
Did you ever seek counseling or therapy for healing past traumas to have someone new in your life?
So, not therapy per se, but I did start the practice of meditation. And through some people that are really powerful guided meditators, people like Michael Beckwith, right?
Yeah.
Allowed me to not just sit in silence in meditation, but actually bring those things in, examine them without judgment and with more positive energy. Focus on forgiving those things and forgiving yourself of your actions and just recognizing it's the past and you are not your past.
That's huge. That's huge. I think taking time to reflect on patterns, like what Dave just shared, in your past relationships is huge. Anything like journaling, meditating, therapy, even going on long runs can help you start the journey of healing, because continuing the cycle of pattern after pattern and for so many years, you're just giving in to yourself. Don't do that. You have a huge, incredible life to live, and you want it to be high and vibrating and enjoyable, where you wake up in the morning with the person next to you and you're like, yes, even after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you're still like, yes, 60 years. You're still like, I'm so glad I've been all in. And I allowed this person into my life because I took care of the past traumas. And that's what we're talking about, because when we're talking about 99% of the reason relationships fail, when you're coming into a relationship and you're carrying all that baggage and you didn't get help for yourself and you notice your patterns aren't really in alignment, how a healthy relationship, and I'm not saying healthy relationships need to be a certain way, but there are some points that need to be in alignment for a healthy relationship. And we should make an episode, Dave, on that, because we should do the opposite of this. We're talking about failure. We should talk about like healthy relationships, you know?
And this is the reverse of an idea. So I think we're sort of doing both. But I just want to close that part out. And here he goes. He's bringing running and athletics back into it. But one of the things that sort of triggered my transition through that relationship was I recognized that my health was headed in the wrong direction. And I took control of that, right? And I approached it sort of like I approached my SEO business. I'm like, there's got to be a way to optimize my health, but there's something that happens that's really fundamentally like transformative and powerful when you take control of your health. And it allows you to go, what else in my life can I improve? Because you just start seeing the benefits, right? You just start feeling incredible. And so things like money, relationships, those sorts of things bubbled up to the top very quickly because they're so in the forefront. And that's when I'm like, I'm going to have to make some decisions here. Yeah. And clearly the decision was, and I'm going to work on this to make it work, right? I'm like, this is just fundamentally not going to work for me. Yeah. Because you can't change other people, right? And that's the thing about attracting who you are and not what you want. The other person in the relationship has to be sort of in alignment. They don't have to agree with you, right? But they have to be in alignment energetically with the direction that you're headed.
If you're in a relationship right now and you're like, hey, I can't go back. I've already been with someone for like 7 years or 3 years, and it's really frustrating and things aren't going really well, it is time to get an outside opinion. On board some therapy. You know, we've talked to you about that in previous episodes, even BetterHelp, Cerebral, I think Talkspace are 3 that we have recommended for online therapy, and or journal, or start recognizing your patterns. And when I say just journal the patterns that you've noticed. What is it that you're unhappy about? And maybe you need to look at what you're bringing into the space as well, because you're pointing the finger at the other person, but maybe what you're bringing into the space is what you need to be working on yourself, because it could be some old patterns that you didn't think about that have crept up, and now they're in the relationship and you're inside of it, and it's time that you really love the person that you're with, but you want a better relationship. You want to make it better. So,
and I did get a good piece of advice, right? And so this is offhanded, compared to going to therapy, something like that. But I went for drinks with one of my closest friends, Dan, and he had seen this relationship from the outside as
the whole
a friend
time, right?
for a long time.
Yeah.
And I started talking about what was going on. I was like, dude, you've only got one life, and it's right now. So make a decision for your life, and dump the bucket in terms of guilt and expectation and good, bad, and move forward. And now I still talk to him every day. He's like, see, I'm right. See how much happier you are. So
Great advice.
it was good advice. Yeah.
Yeah. Great advice.
So I bought drinks that day.
Well, somebody's got to. It kind of moves on. It kind of ties into lesson number 2, which we're talking about chemistry versus compatibility. And I think that is a huge piece in relationships and why they fail, because chemistry is that spark that ignites an instant connection. But here's the thing. Chemistry can fade. Compatibility, on the other hand, is what sustains a relationship in the long run. Long-term healthy relationships are built on shared values with emotional alignment and the ability to grow together. So David and I know firsthand that while chemistry got us started, it's compatibility that's kept us grounded. And I don't know,
What,
Dave.
we're not over the chemistry part? Wait a second.
We still have chemistry, but I think a lot of relationships, boom, start in fire, and then they end because the compatibility is not there. When we connected, if you don't know Dave and I's story, we actually worked together for 4 years over the phone, virtual relationship, before we actually met. And then we actually waited a whole nother year to get married. And it was a compatibility, experiment. Are we compatible for a year to actually get married? So it was like 5 years of knowing each other and then 1 year of being together before we said, hey, let's get married.
I love the discussion of chemistry, because people have this unrealistic belief that the other person is going to complete them, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like the example I gave of that long-term relationship. It's just not true. You have to come into the relationship as a whole 100% being person, and not be dependent, on the other person to be like, make up your mind, complete you, all those sorts of things that I think Hollywood sometimes paints that picture. But that's a recipe for disaster, because you just end up with this one person having the power, one person feeling they don't have the power, which is always dangerous. And that was us when we came together. We were pretty clear about what we wanted in life. In fact, we had some incredible discussions before we ever got together to even decide whether we were in alignment from a life standpoint, because I think we both knew in those early moments, this was not going to be a casual sort of thing. It was either an all in or not at all. And we agreed to that, right? We actually talked about it. So
I do think that young people, though, are struggling. And, when you think of yourself back in the 20s and, or a teenager, and you're moving into your 20s and moving into your 30s, and you're starting to panic. And so it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to have somebody. I've got to have somebody. And so it's just relationship, but then it fails. And then another relationship, then it fails. And pretty soon you look back and say, I've been with 10 people or 7 people or 20 or more. It's funny. I don't run with music. And during the race day, I passed some of the 10K walkers, because part of the half marathon that we did, there was a 10K, you can walk or run it. And it was interesting because I listened to a couple that, and I don't know if they were friends, possibly friends. It kind of made sense that we were friends. But one of the guys said to the girl, he said, "What are your values?" And I thought, wow, that's so interesting that they're having that conversation. What are your values? And they were young. And so I was thinking, wow, are young couples now having that conversation? Like, what are your values? That's interesting. So I think when you think about your relationship right now, I think you have to ask yourself some questions. Do you and your partner share a deeper connection beyond attraction? Do your goals and values align? Because sometimes you can connect, the attraction's there, you feel like things are smooth, but then one of you is not going in the same direction. Like you said, the compatibility is like different, or the age difference doesn't make sense for the alignment of where you're both going, and you're bringing in some, I don't know, old soul versus young soul,
Right.
coming into it together.
And I sort of observed that yesterday during the party, right? Your brother is married now. And so there is this feeling with everybody there like, it's finally complete, right?
Yeah.
But relationship is a choice that you make every single day.
Yeah.
And if you're not conscious of the fact that you have to bring your A game as much as you can into the relationship, every time you open your eyes, you're going to end up way off base. And even if you're just a little bit off base, today, over the course of 14 years, you find yourself like so far in a different direction that not good thing, bad thing. It just is, right?
That reminds me of the tractor driving in the field who is off by just a fraction. And they continue driving not straight, and they are just by a fraction. And now they've gone clear out in the field because they stayed on that not straight line, that was their focus point. And now if they would have just readjusted their wheels just a little bit, they would have been back on track. Right. Because you get further and further away as you're moving your wheels in that direction, but you're allowing yourself, like you in your 14 years, you allowed yourself to be off just a little bit. But it took you a little bit further away, a little bit further. Every year you're getting a little bit further away. And that also comes down to giving in a hope for yourself. Because when you give in to hope for yourself and you just say, I'm in a hurry, I have to have this, or this is my commitment because, she's pregnant, or I feel responsible for her. You've given up on yourself at the end of the day. You don't need to be in a hurry. In fact, I'm working with a friend right now who feels rushed. I want career. I want the perfect wife. I want everything right now. Everything. The car, the money, the island, everything. And it's just blowing my mind, because I think you have to come back and say, do you love yourself? And how much do you love yourself? Be patient. It is one of the biggest things that we don't honor in ourselves, is finding patience. And I didn't even write that as a core lesson in this. But I think it's important to think about being patient. Don't feel rushed.
And don't confuse patience with complacency, right? Where complacency is like you just let everything slide under the bridge, right? But being patient is important, because in the journey, right, it's like, use tractor, I'll use plane, right? A plane flies from here to Hawaii, and it's off course 99% of the time. But they adjust the course every,
it's auto-adjusted.
X minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they keep adjusting the course because the winds change, things change, and you end up right exactly where you envisioned on the islands, right? But
This is so important. This comes down to creating your life manifesto, which we talked about in a few episodes back. And we also talked about meditation, how important meditation is. And I want to deep dive into meditation, what that connection with your brain and heart is, and how that can really align the vision for yourself that ties back into the life manifesto, how important that is. But I know that's not today's topic. And I know we want to keep going to continue providing you some answers and some ideas to help you with your relationships. We talked about healing past traumas. We talked about chemistry and compatibility. Let's talk about creating a safe emotional space. I mean, the strongest relationships are really built on emotional safety. Dave, if we didn't have emotional safety with each other, we wouldn't have the strong relationship. I mean, where both partners feel secure enough to be vulnerable. And it's not all the time, by the way. Sometimes I don't feel, safe enough to be vulnerable, or you might not feel safe. It has to be timing, and then you and I have to work through it, and then there's an allowance, to find that vulnerable space to share. But, experts consistently highlight the importance of self-compassion and preparation in creating space for a life partner, of creating that safe emotional space. Life isn't always like perfectly organized, obviously, but, deep connections often align with when we open our hearts to it. And being with someone also means opening your heart to them when the time is right and they want to share. It's what makes a relationship successful. Dave and I have what we call weekly safe check-ins, where we discuss anything without judgment. We open the table up and say what's on the table. Creating emotional safety is so important in our relationship. It's kind of like throwing out a deck of cards. Throw out the deck of cards on the table and say, what do you want to talk about today? Like, what do we need to talk about? What's important? What's on the table that is like, you don't want to shove underneath the rug? Because I used to, in my whole old life, shove a lot of things underneath the rug, and I would get irritated with Dave. And I said, oh my gosh, my rug is so full. I've shoved like 50 things underneath. I don't do that anymore. That was old past Wendy Jae. Now I say, this is on the table. I want to talk about it. Can we make time to talk about it?
We just rent a carpet cleaner and we just suck everything out from under that rug. So,
I love that. Get the vacuum out. Let's go.
I think one of the things that is prevalent in a lot of relationships, especially when two people are really energetically close to each other and they're in alignment, but the synergy feels so close that you actually think the other person can read your mind, right?
Yeah.
And so it creates these expectations like, hey, Dave knows what's going on or Wendy knows what's going on, but you've never actually voiced the expectation. And then there's this little blow up moment, like, and this happens, this happens to all couples, like what you should have done, what you should have said, what you could have done, like there's all these shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And the other person's like, how was I even supposed to know? Because, and then you're offended, right? You're like, well, of course you should know. We're like, we're incredible together. And that's one of the things that I think if you voice more of those things, it becomes less of a problem in the moment, right? It avoids that blow up. It avoids the accumulation of whatever was under your rug, and recognize the moments when you start to say that, like, what you should have done is this, which is perfectly acceptable, except in the moment, right? When things are heated and you're having a disagreement, like what you should have done, and like the other person's just never ready to hear it. So make a note out of it, and then during the next check-in, when you guys are, talking,
having your weekly check-in.
Have your weekly check-in. That's when you bring it up, and I'm even a big advocate of letting someone know, especially if it's something big that's on your heart. It's what you want to talk about, right? Like we're going to talk later this afternoon, and the one thing I want to talk about is X, so that it doesn't come as a surprise.
Yeah, agree. We're all living every single day with a voice in our head, and sometimes you're thinking, or sometimes I'm thinking, I've told David I'm doing this. I've told you that I'm doing this training today. I told you that I'm doing this, but not all the time. That's in your head. You have not voiced it. You have not said it out loud. So like in the morning when we are, sitting on the stretching mats and we're stretching together, I'm already thinking about my training and what I'm getting ready to do, after 30 minutes of stretching or an hour of stretching. I'm either, jumping on the trail run or hitting the bike or, whatever it's going to be. But I need to voice it to you. I'm thinking about it, but I never voice it to you, like Dave said today, like I was getting ready for the podcast and he was like, hey, are we still doing the podcast? I'm like, of course we're doing the podcast, but I didn't voice it.
I was asking that for a different reason because we're so maxed out.
We are.
This
is a heavy week.
Like, coming off the wedding party yesterday, I was like, I just want a day.
I know.
Off. But too. It's on the calendar. Sometimes you can.
We're going to have to push through. Yeah. Push through this week.
So anyway, I derailed there. I guess because it's election season, this thought came to my head, and that is fact check your thoughts, right? Because we each have thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of thoughts every single day. And then, your partner has these expectations that haven't been voiced, and that's coming into your head in consciousness at some point. So if you fact check your thoughts, and Dr. Amen Clinic said, don't believe every stupid thing you think. It's sort of that checkup from the neck up where you're like, all right, I'm thinking this thing, I'm angry about this thing, whatever it is. And then have a little fact check and go, oh, if I look at it from up here, like this is all me, right? This is all the conversation that's going on in my head. Yeah. And I haven't communicated any of it.
I think it's important in this lesson to really create a habit of regular check-ins with your partner. It is the biggest thing that can help start and continue maintaining a consistent, healthy habit. Start with 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be every day, but once a week. It could be every day. I mean, if that feels right to you, or it could be every couple of days or 3 times a week or whatever it is. But you need a place where you emotionally are allowing each other to speak freely without judgment, and put the phones down. Put the phones down. It's super irritating to have a phone in your hand while you're talking to your partner. Your girlfriend, your boyfriend. Put the phone down and look at them face to face and be like, "Hey, this is what's up. Let's talk about this." It doesn't have to be bad things too. Emotional check-in can be a good thing. Like, "Hey, I'm super stoked about this XYZ thing." So it doesn't have to be a bad thing too. It could be like, "Hey, I'm just super jammed, about this one thing." So, don't look at it as like, "Oh, I have to have this," as a negative. Look at it as a totally neutral ground of just checking in with each other. These are the things that have come through this week. We just want to touch base.
Good point, because if it becomes this designated dumping ground every time someone brings up like, "Hey, we're going to have the powwow," the other person's like, "You know what? I'm out."
Yeah, it just doesn't sound fun.
Yeah. I just don't want to have a
You
dumping
can also
ground.
make it fun, by the way. You don't have to be like, "Hey," go to coffee, go for a walk, you can take yourself to a destination, to a place to have it. Go watch the sunset, go hold hands, go, do something. Maybe it's even a dinner. "Hey, we're going to do weekly check-in over dinner." Great. Do it. Whatever feels right to you. That's the whole point is consistency, maintain a habit of doing it. And the whole point at the same time is allowing your emotional connection to build a stronger, healthy relationship.
At the end of the day, you just got to remember that you either grow together or you grow apart together, and you're both responsible for that communication. And what is your intention, right? Is your intention to grow your relationship, or just you make a decision to see what happens? Because that's also a decision that you make to grow apart, and it will end up failing.
Yeah.
Or you'll be unhappy.
When we're talking about 99% of the reason relationships fail, and this is one of them, it's really important to make sure that you have emotional check-ins. This is a very big piece of this. So, all right.
Can I call a timeout here for just a second?
Yeah.
So inevitably, we are going to get someone who puts in the comments here, "Where did you get 99%
for sure.
as the number?" And
For sure.
I'm even questioning it now.
Yeah.
So share with me a little bit about where that comes from and the intention of it.
So when I was working on this episode, I go out and I listen to other influencers and people I believe in their podcasts. And Lewis Howes launched a 99% Why Relationships Fail podcast, similar to what we're talking about. Not exactly this. And then there was a couple of others. Sri Kumar Rao had something. It wasn't a podcast. It was a great article. And then there was someone else. I think it was Jay Shetty I listened to. And Tom and Lisa Bilyeu had something about. And out of all those influencers, I was reading their articles, listening to their podcasts, listening to a couple of their shows. They all relatively had very similar lessons. Very similar. There was a couple that were different, and there's probably way more than 5 that we're talking about. Could be 10, could be 20, could be 30 reasons or more why relationships fail. I'm just saying that these were some of the top 5 that I picked up on during all of my research, thinking about it. And then I took that into hand as what I've been through myself, not just what other people have been through, what I have seen in myself that I could have done better in relationships that failed. What could I done in relationships that I thought were in alignment with me that were not, that I needed to work on myself. I think of the young Wendy Jae who didn't have the emotional capacity to actually create emotional check-ins, because I never even heard of that. I'm thinking about, my exes. I'm like, I didn't even think that I could have emotional check-ins with them. I never thought about, is it just chemistry or is it compatibility? Are we on the right foundation? Are we growing to, I had not thought through this. So I also took my experience wrapped up with what I learned, through these episodes.
And so much of what we learn about relationships, especially is
through this research,
kids, is what we see around us, right?
Oh,
From
yeah.
our parents and what's going on. And that formulates a very dangerous way to think about relationships moving forward, because if you repeat the problems or the issues that you saw growing up, like, you've just set yourself up for a course that's going to be a disaster. and create a lot of unhappiness. So sometimes you really need to work on yourself to unwind that sort of stuff and fact check. Here we go with the fact checking again, right? Like, is that really have anything to do with me, or I was just growing up as a kid, right? And I saw this stuff. So
Yeah, you also don't want to play out to what your parents want you to do or to be or to become. Don't go down that road. Do what you feels right for you. There's a lot of pressure that can really change your decisions in one direction or another. So let's dive in, though, Dave, to lesson number 4 from what I learned. The power of acceptance and allowance is huge. One of the biggest lessons I've learned in my relationships is acceptance. You can't change your partner. You shouldn't have to, but true love is about accepting imperfections and differences while growing together. So this doesn't mean compromising your values, but it does mean embracing your partner truly as they are. Now, Dave and I aren't exactly alike. There's not everything that we love about each other 100% all day long. But I let Dave be David. I know that he just needs to also have the freedom just to be you. And I think
and guys sometimes just need their own bathroom, right? Like that.
That's right.
Just go in your bathroom.
Just have that bathroom.
Yeah. Turn the fan on.
But what I'm doing is I'm creating that power of acceptance and knowing like this is what you need, and I'm giving you the space to have that. And you do the same for me. This is what Wendy needs. She needs to go run for an hour or 2 hours or be on her bike or go to the foothills or hang out at the river or meditate for 30 minutes or whatever it is. And you give me that power. And that's amazing. And I think giving each other that is a healthy way to have a relationship. That's also what I've learned through studying through these different mentors is the same thing, the power of acceptance and allowance.
And you take some of your power and you give it to the other person, and it helps them raise their vibrational frequency, right? And I think that's just so important when we think about relationships. We often don't think about energy, but that's what we are. We're just energetic beings, right? With all these different inputs. And if you don't allow the other person's energy to flow, right, inevitably it will dam up, and then they become someone that isn't actually communicative. So
well, and I also think we have to practice accepting our partner's quirks. We all have quirks and imperfections and weird things that we just make us, right? Each other. So instead of trying to change that, love them for just loving them for who they are, but allow them to be themselves. Because still at the end of the day, the foundation is strong enough that you don't need to change every single thing in your partner,
And you can't.
You cannot. And if it's not going to work long term, then you go back to compatibility. It's just a compatibility issue. This is not a long-term relationship. So I do think that when we're talking about the power of acceptance and allowance, it is really important, though, when you are building a healthy relationship to allow the imperfections, allow the things that just are, that drive you nuts, that just like, oh my gosh, why are you eating like that? And just be like, okay, just like, all right, let him have his thing. Dave likes to eat a lot of meat off the bones. And I'm like, I think it's disgusting, but it's all good. I love you the same.
So it's like art, right? So imperfections are what make the perfection.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I also, if you want to send me ribs, I love meat off the bone.
Dave loves a lot of ribs, yeah. Shall we move on?
Yes, I think we should after that.
Lesson number 5.
I can't wait for the visual that you're actually going to find for the video of me
gnawing on some bones.
Gnawing on like one of those tomahawk steak bones.
Lesson number 5, everyone that I talked about and everyone that I listened to and read through when I was working on this talked about communication. And we have not touched on that. And communication is the key to a deeper connection, 100%. Communication is more than words. It's about understanding and connecting with your partner in a way that they need to be connected with. And when communication breaks down, so does the trust, and so does the emotional intimacy. And that just starts the ripple effect. Dave and I were introduced to last year a process communication model through Brendan Kane's Hook Point team. And it transformed how we did business and our relationship as well, because we learned about our different styles of communication model. And this is big. This is going deeper than what the mentors that and the psychologists and the psychiatrists and the communication specialists and the relationship counselors and all the mentors that I did the research on, this was deeper. But when you can take advantage of taking your relationship to next level in understanding the communication style your partner has, you can now play towards that. Using communication models has helped Dave and I communicate more effectively, resolve conflicts, and connect deeply, improving both our personal and professional relationships, because we are now seeing it through a different lens. And before, we hadn't seen we didn't know what a communication model was. We were just being us.
Right.
And now we're like, oh, okay, that's a thinker, that's a rebel, she's a harmonizer, they need XYZ. And now we can play to that strengths with our team, with each other, with family, with friends. We can call it out and be like, okay, that sister needs these things. They need these traits. And we can also know how to take it back so our feelings aren't hurt. For example, I'm a harmonizer. So it takes a lot of work for me to communicate to different personality traits that are not giving me my feedback. Also, if somebody knows, though, your partner knows what you need, then they're going to work on communicating with you in your needs and your styles and your preferences. And that is so cool. So I think I threw this in here because, well, Dave and I launched our Speak to Connect program. You've heard us talk about it. It is live. We have a few spots available. So please jump on. We're only doing 2 more sessions for this year. And we did want to get it out to everyone. We're super fired up about it. We haven't done a lot of advertising on it at all because it just fills up and then it's gone. So if you have a chance to jump in, jump in. But Dave, talk to us right now about communication and being the key, because, we were talking about the voice in your head, that you don't speak a lot. There's a whole nother, it's not just about speaking, it's about the style of using that to your advantage.
Right. We all have our different style, right? And so in PCM, like your both base and phase, like your top level where you generate your most energy is that harmonizer, right? My least energetic spot in my communication is harmonizer. So how does that work, right? Because I'm a core rebel, right? I like to have fun. You like to have feelings. Not that we don't meet in the middle there, but just having the knowledge of people are different and there's different communication channels. And just like running, right? You've got to run every week to build up your strength in an area that you didn't used to be strong in. PCM is the same way, and it allows you to raise your energy in places that make your relationship better because your partner has a certain communication style that's just baked into them from their DNA, from the day they were born, basically.
Not a lot of people or the mentors that I was researching talk about this, and I found it very interesting because this is a very high level power couple move. This is this technique of Speak to Connect, which is our program called Speak to Connect, is based off the model of what David's talking about, process communication model. And it truly is a model that shares with you your personality type as the communicator and your partners. And anybody can go through it. It's not just for power couples. If you're an entrepreneur and you just want to know and get ahead, for the next relationship, or you've been in a relationship for 10, 20 plus years, and you just want to refine it, like jump in. Because now that I know that David, let's say for an example, is a rebel, I know that his strengths and preferences are fun. When he gets in a down mood, I know how to help change him and get out of it. I also know that that's how he prefers to be communicated with, and vice versa. When David knows, we're going to sit down and have a chat, then he knows that he's got to bring a different tone, a different language to the communication game.
Place I've got to work on.
Yep, place you got to work on. But this has also really helped us dial in our team and how we respond. So I know certain people on our team love like emojis, like more fun, like shout outs. I know some are more thinkers and really prefer a different interaction style. This has helped with our clients because now I know, okay, I'm pretty sure that this client, knowing off their traits, is probably this. So this I know how to react to. They're very like short words, sharp, and I'm okay with that because I know that's how that person is. Like I'm 99% sure that this type of communication model that they are. So it's easy for me to communicate. Now, it didn't provide me a good feeling back, but it's okay because they don't need to know it. It's that it's a benefit for me knowing that I know that that's probably how they need to be communicated to based on how they're communicating to me.
And I know for some personality types, they're going to hear this and they're going to go, okay, so they're talking about a way to be inauthentic, or they're talking about a way to be manipulative. And it's really not that at all. It's about leveling up in areas where you naturally have a disadvantage. I just like to call it low energy, right?
Yeah.
And if you're committed to the relationship and you want it to work, then it's your job to find the tools, right? And I like to laugh and say, PCM is a little bit like the cheat codes to your relationship. But imagine if you had the cheat codes where you figure out how to work through some levels to make your partner feel good, make you feel good, have better communication. And then it becomes natural, right? Like you learn, like in video games, you learn the level and you move on to something that's more important. Because if you don't do that work, if you don't learn those levels, you end up for the rest of your life staying stuck at some like base level where you never get past it. And no bueno, right? Like you can't have more, do more, be more, and be happy if you don't figure out some of these keys that are never going to come naturally to you. It's just not going to appear one morning. You're like, oh, I can do this.
Right, exactly. This, and that's why we end up calling it Speak to Connect. It's a mastery program for couples or entrepreneurs that want to learn more about leveling up communication with each other. And when I said 99% of relationships fail, this is one of them. Communication, period. It doesn't even have to be a communication model and understanding that, but just communication, period, is one. But I wanted to add this one in here as number 5 because I wanted to give you a tool that you can, go out and get, sign up for, hang out with us, learn more about. But I think, Dave, we need to kind of close this out because
I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
And that is, when people hear that we have this program for couples, they immediately go to the negative, right? Because that's where our DNA always goes. And they're like, so you're going to teach me how to win arguments or work through conflict or win disagreements or those sorts of things, or make it so those things don't happen, right? Like I want a relationship where disagreement doesn't happen. And it's nothing like that because disagreements are inevitable, right? It's the conflict that's optional. And I'm picking those words very carefully because disagreement is like, you want chocolate, I want vanilla, right? But a conflict is you're having vanilla whether you want it or not. That's sort of where the conflict is. And those things are completely optional. If you have the tools to be able to communicate through those pieces, then the disagreement, you can walk away still both disagreeing, right? Like, you like this, I like this. Cool. Now we know where we're at, and there's no argument around it. Because once an argument breaks out, that's where communication fails completely, right? Nobody's listening. Everybody's just wanting to be right. And then we walk away hurt because, hey, I'm not heard, I'm not right, all of those sorts of things. So arguing is a natural, not arguing, but disagreeing is a natural part of the relationship, but arguing is not.
We are going to cover those things in Speak to Connect program. You can go learn more about it on my website, wendyjae.com/speak to connect, or just go to my website, wendyjae.com, and click under, I think it's called Work With Me, and you'll see the page Speak to Connect. And it does break down, we do go through how to improve disagreements and how to help your partner bring them out of going down the levels of stairs of,
and being able to recognize those distress sequences before they
100%.
They come out, right? Because they're signals. And often we all know they're there, right? Like there's that awkward silence. You're like, oh, I know what's going on
At the
here.
same time, when you know this, not just for your relationship, your love relationship, you can really help business. Again, I want to go back to business. We had a partnership last year that failed because of communication. It failed. Now, had that partner been a little bit more tuned into this, we could have already been on a different page just in the friendship. So we lost a friendship and we lost a partner. And that was really, really uncomfortable for us. But it was the communication that didn't get put in place. And
on both sides, right? Like we have to take our responsibility in that too. But it sucks, and it is going to happen. But having the tools to be able to make it happen less and not get in those situations in the first place, I think is really the important takeaway. And from a business standpoint, like close more deals. If you're life
Know how to
revolves
use it.
around closing deals. This is a way to help meet people where they're at.
Now, listen, we talked briefly. I just brushed over at Brendan Kane, and from Hope Point. He has had massive success using this in incredible campaigns with Rihanna, Taylor Swift, Coca-Cola, Disney. So many more clients that I could label. And this is on the business side of how to connect authentically with an audience using this communication model. So it's not just for love relationships. This goes far, far beyond that. So when you hire people like Brendan Kane, like we did, we were learning way bigger. Like we wanted not just for our love relationship, but for our business, our team, and everyone around us, even including our internal campaigns. How can we structure the conversation with you, even as the listener, where we can be authentic with you and really be true to what your needs are and listen to what we can be for you. So I do want to kind of wrap this up, Dave, and just share again the 5 takeaways from this episode and just run through them really quickly so you have a action step that goes with each of these. Okay, so we talked about healing past traumas. Working through unresolved emotional wounds can sabotage your current relationship. So your action step is to start journaling, write down your habits, and really onboard some therapy to address these issues. Number 2 is prioritize compatibility over chemistry. Chemistry, remember, is the spark of connection, but compatibility sustains it. So your action step is reflect on whether your relationship is built on compatibility or just attraction. Number 3, create emotional safety. It's essential for vulnerability and authentic connection. Your action step is get your weekly check-ins scheduled on your calendar with your partner to share thoughts and feelings without judgment. Create the emotional safety with that. Number 4, practice acceptance and allowance. Remember, embracing partners' imperfections is important, and your action step is focus on appreciating your partner's strengths. Man, kudos. Give your partner a high five for crossing that finish line for the day. Let's go. Let go of the control of changing them. Be with them. And the number 5 is communication is key. We just talked about that. Effective communication is the foundation of every strong relationship. So your action step is start asking meaningful questions and practice active listening to deepen your connection together. And if you want to dive deeper, head on over and sign up and join our Speak to Connect program. We would love to see you guys there. So that kind of wraps it up, Dave. I just want to remind our listeners or viewers that leave us a comment if you want us to consider an episode topic or you want to suggest our next adventure. We're already talking about 2025 and we're talking about 2026 and we're doing some really big things. So whether you want to, come run with us doing rim to rim, Grand Canyon, or maybe maybe Dave and I are going to dive into a 29-0-29 with Jesse Itzler. We don't know. We're trying to line all that up. So if you, have a suggestion for us on an episode topic or want to join our adventure, leave us a comment somewhere on anywhere where you're listening to this or finding this, and or again share a future episode idea. So and DM us always with any questions out there on any of our channels. We're always there to respond to you. So before I wrap this up, Dave, do you have anything else to share?
No, just looking at my notes, I've got some good takeaways here. And the thing I want to drop is relationship is a choice that you make every single day, and the power of intention, right? When you apply that to your vision of your future, you make better choices on a daily basis that are going to get you where you want to go. And if you just let life happen to you, then you're going to have to take what you get, and you may not be so happy with it.
Yeah, I always think to myself, is it sunshine or is it fire? Which one are you going to roll for? And sometimes both is a little okay, but really, go for the inner fire inside and make sure that you're doing the thing that lights both of you up.
No, interesting. Sunshine is a fire.
Yeah.
It's a very big fire. It's just very far away.
So, all right, we're going to wrap this up. We want to say mahalo for joining us on this deep dive into building lasting love, really. Remember that relationships are not about perfection. They're about growth, acceptance, and emotional safety. So take these lessons and apply them to your relationship today, whether you're with yourself or your partner. If you've enjoyed today's episode, share it with someone you love. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We would love that. And follow us on Instagram for more insights out there on, our connection, coaching, our adventures together. So until next time, keep fueling the flame inside you and show up for love every single day because that's who you are. So choose to keep going. Aloha.
Aloha.